Everyone loves a good treasure hunt, and some believe the mysterious stones in this next story could unlock the secret location of untold riches. Do we have your attention? It's 2004 in Phoenix, Arizona. Third-generation treasure hunter Dan Dillman is at the Arizona Mining and Mineral Museum, where he's been granted special access to view some artifacts that have long been a family obsession. These photos show replicas of a set of rectangular slabs known as the Peralta stones. They're each 18 inches wide and 12 inches tall. One is known as the horse stone, or the priest stone, and features a horse on one side and a priest on the back. A second, the trail map stone, features what looks like a pictorial map. The third has a recessed heart that's filled with a separate heart-shaped stone. This heart tablet seems to connect with the trail map.
I first heard about the Peralta stone tablets from my grandfather and uncles when I was just a little kid, sitting at the kitchen table talking about treasure stories. And my grandfather and uncles truly believed that these were real stone maps that led to some place.
Anthropologist Kathy Strange says the story goes that the original tablets were found in the 1940s in Arizona.
Police officer Travis Tumbleston was near Apache Junction, Arizona, and he just stepped out of the car to stretch his legs, and he found these stones buried in the dirt next to where he was parked.
This heart-shaped insert was apparently found later by someone who went back to search the area.
The prevailing theory is that these stones will tell the way to get to the Lost Dutchman mine. Now, Lost Dutchman mine is believed to be on some land in the Superstition Mountains. In 1748, the land was granted to a Mexican cattle baron named Don Miguel Peralta. It is said that there was a gold mine on that property, but he rarely ever went to it.
In the 1870s, German immigrant Jacob Waltz supposedly found the location of the mine and spent years filling his saddlebags with gold. Dutchman was a common American term for a German in the 1800s, from the anglicized version of the German word Deutsch.
It's possible that these stones led him to find the mine, but it's also possible that he's the one that authored these to help him remember where the mine was.
A number of searchers have mysteriously died or gone missing while hunting for this gold, and that only adds to the superstition that surrounds these peaks.
We continue following the information that we've gleaned from the Peralta stone maps, and we believe they lead to some of the greatest treasures this world has ever known.
The Superstition Mountains are renowned for more than just the legend of the Lost Dutchman mine. Some Apaches believe a hole leading to the underworld is located there. What can our experts discover about this legendary search for treasure? Let's put them on the hunt. Archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart first deciphers what the stones say, starting with the priest stone.
One of the tablets has a text that in Spanish says, "Look for the map," which strikes me as a little odd, considering these tablets are supposed to be the map. On the flip side, we have what's called the horse tablet, and then there's text, again in Spanish, saying, "The horse of Santa Fe, I graze north of the river," which people have taken to be some sort of cryptic directions to the mine. One of the troubles I have with that particular text, though, is that horse, caballo, is misspelled.
Barnhart adds that on the heart stone, there appears to be a date, 1847, the last year Arizona was a part of Mexico. But what about the symbols on the other tablets, like the so-called trail map stone?
The trail map itself seems to be kind of squiggly lines. There's no place where it begins or ends, so it's very difficult to discern how you would use it as a map.
So who carved these stones? Barnhart says it's unlikely the German prospector Waltz would have been literate in the 1800s, much less have the education to be able to write words in other languages. And more importantly, he says the stones reveal two completely different levels of carving skill.
The stones appear to be carved by two different authors. One is a much better artist than the other.
NASA geologist Dr. Bob Anderson agrees there seems to be two separate artists, and he says they performed their work in different centuries.
The carvings that you see on the two sandstone ones, which is the map, are pretty legitimate of what you would find in the 1840s and 1850s. These rocks are scattered all over Arizona, and they were used as markers to show people where you want them to go. The horse, on the other hand, and the heart appear to be totally different. That heart symbol is probably much more recent, I would say probably in the 1940s or 1950s. These two rocks that are carved later do not belong to the same puzzle that the first two do.
So, we're left a bit puzzled by these stones. Our verdict? The trail map stone and the heart stone might be legitimate 19th century marker stones, but the heart-shaped insert and double-sided horse or priest stone are likely fakes from the 20th century. And since they're not part of the same set, it's unlikely they reveal the hidden spot of a treasure trove. 2020, Staffordshire, England. Historical researcher Andrew Baker is visiting Shugborough Hall, a centuries-old country house with numerous neoclassical monuments. But he's here to see just one. Framed by a pair of columns sits an enigma carved in stone, the Shepherd's Monument.
The monument stands by the river, surrounded by trees and quite dark shrubs, so it's eerie and mysterious.
Footage of the marble relief shows 4 people gathered around a tomb that reads, Et in Arcadia Ego. Below the carved scene is a stone plaque bearing only the cryptic letters O-U-O-S-V-A-V-V, flanked by a D and an M. Andrew says its meaning is one of the most enduring puzzles in England.
The idea that there was something in England that had a coded message on it might be to do with secret societies, treasure, who knows what. It's as if it's been planted there for us to read today.
Historians believe the Shepherd's Monument was commissioned by the estate's owner, Thomas Anson, and that it was built sometime around the 1750s. Beyond that, the details get murky.
The theory goes that Thomas Anson's brother, Royal Navy Admiral George Anson, circumnavigated the globe collecting treasure that was hidden away somewhere, and that the Shugborough Hall inscription leads to the location of that lost treasure.
Yet some believe the inscription leads to treasure, even more precious than gold.
Another theory goes that the Anson family were members of an organization known as the Priory of Sion, descendants of the Knights Templar who were rumored to originally be charged with protecting the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is said to be the cup that was used to serve wine at the Last Supper and collected blood from Jesus during the crucifixion.
Or could the Holy Grail be something else? According to legend, the Priory of Sion claimed that Jesus Christ was an earthly, not a heavenly king whose bloodline traced itself to ancient France's Merovingian dynasty. So some believe the Holy Grail is not actually a physical cup, but rather the Priory's secret knowledge that Jesus married Mary Magdalene and had children with her. One codebreaker has suggested the Shugborough inscription stands for Jesus as deity defied, which has been linked to these controversial beliefs. Many of these theories laid the groundwork for Dan Brown's wildly popular Da Vinci Code franchise. Professional scholars have dismissed many of those claims as pseudo-history, but the idea of a secret society protecting a holy bloodline retains a grip on popular culture. So it's time to see if our experts can chisel out the truth. Archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart begins with the theory that George Anson collected treasures from around the world and that the code is a way to find them.
What George Anson collected in today's money would be millions of dollars of wealth. But if we look at the Shugborough Hall property and all of these amazing monuments, it would appear that most of George's wealth went into the estate itself.
If Anson spent the lion's share of his fortune, which seems to be the case since his family fell out of prominence, then maybe this isn't a literal treasure map, but rather a clue to how the Ansons hid the truth about the Holy Grail as members of the Priory of Sion. Catholic miracle researcher Michael O'Neill says the main problem with that theory is this supposed secret society didn't actually exist.
In the 1950s, a Frenchman named Pierre Plantard started this Priory of Sion, and he attempted to draw a connection between that secret society and the Knights Templar. Unfortunately, there was no such connection. And then in 1993, we see a raid of the apartment of Plantard, where they find all this documentation and letters between Plantard and his friends talking about their intentions to perpetrate this great hoax. So the proof is in the pudding.
So if the Priory of Sion and its connection to the Holy Grail is completely made up, then what does this inscription mean? Barnhart thinks he's found a clue.
The inscription itself is clearly the initials, the first letters of a longer statement. This D and this M are typically on Roman tombs, and it means dis manibus, which means dedicated to the venerated dead. So this may be some sort of monument dedicated to someone who's passed away.
For us, many unanswered questions about this inscription remain. Our verdict is that it's a memorial dedication to someone, though we're still not really sure who. We may have to accept that the message was meant to be kept private and may stay that way forever. It's November 2016, and Sunil Krishnan has made a pilgrimage to the ancient village of Hampi. He is there to explore the beauty and antiquity of the Vatala Temple. The temple's biggest attractions are these mysterious 56 pillars made of solid granite that somehow produce musical notes when struck.
So I went there, then I realized this is beyond my understanding. You heard about this pillar all your life. Finally, you get to play with it. That is an amazing experience.
Journalist Eric Grunhauser says that visitors to the ancient site have been fascinated by the musical pillars for more than 500 years.
The musical pillars of Hampi consist of 56 granite pillars, sometimes referred to as the Sa-Re-Ga-Ma pillars. Sa-Re-Ga-Ma being the Indian version of the tonal scale equivalent to a do, re, mi, fa. So the sounds emitted will change depending on which pillar you are tapping. According to legend, the musical pillars may have been created for the god Vishnu to celebrate his return, and the reincarnation of Vishnu will destroy the wicked and the unjust in this dawning of a new age.
Grundhauser says foreign invaders have long obsessed over the mystery of how these stone columns could produce such soothing music.
The Mughals are said to have charred the pillars for 3 months trying to unlock the secrets of their musical notes. The English ended up carving off 2 of the pillars just to see inside, discovering that they are just granite pillars. Many visitors to the site still have trouble explaining how the pillars could have been created to emit such unique musical tones.
Although we have examples of resonant stones in other parts of the world, there's nothing quite like Hampi's pillars in terms of historical significance. For decades, they have been the subject of numerous scientific studies, and yet they still remain an enigma. So let's see if our experts can solve this ancient riddle. We start with forensic audio analyst Dr. Rob Maher, who has a theory as to how these pillars made of solid rock could make music.
The mechanics of this particular rock and the diameter of the pillars are that it's a flexural vibration, meaning the whole pillar itself is wiggling side to side, almost like a string. And so that's the thing that is allowing it to vibrate at a particular frequency.
Sound crazy? Well, you see examples of flexural vibration all the time, like on a guitar string or a coiled door stopper. To test his theory, Maher creates a synthetic version of a flexural vibration sound and compares it to the columns.
So I'll play the synthesized first. So it has the same characteristic pitch and the general quality to it. And so what we're hearing when the structure is struck is just these flexural vibrations, but the understanding of how they work is still emerging.
So how could a giant piece of stone be made to produce a sound the same way as a guitar string?
Some theories have said that it may be that the pillars are reconstituted granite, and each one of the pillars were purpose-made for the tones. Perhaps there's inclusions in the granite stones that subtly produce these differences in tone, but exactly what that inclusion would be and how Hindus of the 1500s figured that out, these are all still unanswered questions.
Barnhart also points out that even if it was possible for artisans from over 500 years ago to wield the technology needed, the surrounding evidence does not support that conclusion.
The creation of a cement that would be made of granite would involve heating up that granite to thousands of degrees, and there's no evidence of any kilns of that nature being able to get that hot anywhere near the temple.
And even then, the musical mystery remains.
The kind of trial and error it would take to make each one of them consistently make a different tone, it boggles the modern mind how we would go about this process. So the idea that scientists of the 1500s did this not once, but 56 times is really kind of amazing.
Okay, people, we are genuinely stumped. We don't know how these things were made, so we have to conclude the musical pillars of Hampi are the product of a lost technology, forgotten over time. Today, the pillars are cordoned off to prevent further damage to the stone instruments. So if you go, look, but don't touch. It's August 1987 in the town of Romford in East London, UK. A local resident is filling a hole in his yard when suddenly his shovel hits something hard and metallic. In this photo, you can see the strange 12-sided hollow object that's about the size of a tennis ball. Each side has a pentagonal face with a circular hole in the middle, and in each corner is a small rounded knob. Writer Eric Grundhauser says other mysterious devices like this were first discovered in the early 1700s, and they've been baffling people ever since.
What you're looking at in this image is one of the most unexplained mysteries of the ancient world. Even though we found over 100 of them across Europe, no one is still clear on what exactly they are.
They're known as dodecahedrons because of their 12-sided shape, but no one knows exactly how or why they were made. Grundhauser says some suspect the ancients may have used them for communing with the spiritual world.
One of the theories surrounding these dodecahedrons is that they were used as divining tools by augurs or seers, some kind of die or rolling of the bones.
So perhaps these devices were used to predict the future. They have 12 faces that could correspond with the 12 celestial signs of the zodiac, creating a sort of horoscope. Perhaps they were related to the 1st century mystery religion known as Mithraism. This was a secretive cult centered on the god Mithras that drew heavily upon astrological symbolism. A similar connection to the star constellations was proposed by one of the greatest philosophers of all time.
Plato had this idea of these shapes that were the ideal shapes of the universe. The dodecahedron was meant to represent the heavens, that the dodecahedron was itself a mirror of the shape of the universe.
And what makes these objects even more enigmatic is that though they've been found throughout Europe, they're all precisely forged out of metal with the exact same design, though in a variety of small sizes. There's no mention of them in any written records.
We don't know who created these dodecahedrons or how they were even created, but it doesn't look like it would have been easy given ancient technology.
These mysterious contraptions have been uncovered in ancient military camps, temples, and even public baths. So in addition to a fortune-telling tool or religious totem, some have speculated they could be weapons, money, or even just a game. But after centuries of study, we're still no closer to the truth. So let's see if our experts can divine what this is. Anthropologist Kathy Strain explores whether the bronze object could have some religious or spiritual purpose, perhaps related to Mithraism, which was seen as an early rival to Christianity in the Roman Empire.
Mithraism was a star cult. When you think about a star that is multifaceted, multi-edged, maybe this is something that could represent a star. It could be something that you kept in order to practice your religious action.
But Strain reiterates that what complicates this theory is that these objects haven't just been found in temples and other religious sites.
knowing that they have been found in bathhouses, they've been found in Roman camps. We can't use that as evidence to say that this is a religious object.
Archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart says these objects have sometimes been uncovered among caches of coins. Then perhaps this dodecahedron could be some form of money?
It's very large, impractical for a currency. There aren't any identifiable and repeating symbols. If an organized civilization is going to make a currency, it's got the bust of a Roman emperor or something on it.
So it may not be a type of coin, but perhaps it still had a valuable purpose.
I think that it's a survey object. I think that the balls on every corner let it securely attach to basically a tripod. The locations where we find these objects are fairly neatly where the Roman Empire expanded itself by building Roman roads. If you look through the hole on one side, whatever the other side you're looking through is a different diameter hole, which means they are very functional in terms of judging both distance and size of things out in front of you.
The dodecahedron has 6 angles of view, and so if you know the size of an object, you can calculate how far away it is. By looking at the object through the device at a point where the 2 opposite circular holes are superimposed, you can determine the distance by plugging factors like the diameter of each hole, the distance between the 2 holes, and the height of the object into a simple geometric equation. Our verdict? We're going to go with Barnhart on this one and say this was likely a surveying tool. The need to be secured on a tripod would explain why the device has these seemingly extraneous knobs. But remember, there is nothing about these dodecahedra in the written records, and no molds for making them have ever been found, so we'll likely never know for sure. Summer 2020, in the state of Tabasco in southern Mexico, archaeologists are surveying the land from above armed with a new technology called LiDAR. It stands for Light Image Detection and Ranging. Laser beams are sent to the ground and bounce back, creating a digital map of areas hidden for centuries by thick, dense vegetation. The team is working in the remote jungles when their LiDAR detectors uncovered this. It's a series of images which appear to be a city containing rectangular plazas and platforms with distinct lines and edges. So remember, this isn't a photo, it's a laser image of the jungle from above, enabling us to see what's covered by the canopy and underbrush. So take a look at these rectangles. Here, here, and then we've got a large one here. Some of them are nearly a half-mile long. And then take a look at these lines here. I'm just wondering, I could be wrong about this. Could they be roads? Dr. Takashi Inomata led the team that made the discovery.
It was really great, particularly those perfect rectangular shaped site. That's something we were not expecting.
Writer Eric Grundhauser says some have speculated it's a famous, legendary lost city.
These structures and the mysteries surrounding them really harken back to some older legends of lost cities, of the idea of El Dorado.
El Dorado was a legendary city filled with gold that the Spanish conquistadors heard rumors about while exploring the New World in the 1500s. Many died in their unending quest to find it, including the English courtier Sir Walter Raleigh, who was beheaded for battling the Spaniards during the fruitless search. Yet another theory about this site is that it's evidence of the oldest civilization known to Mesoamerica.
These structures could possibly have been created by the Olmec civilization. There are only 2 other major sites where we know the Olmec to have lived.
The Olmec date between 1600 and 350 BC, hundreds of years before the more well-documented Inca, Mayan, and Aztec empires. It's still unclear how and why their civilization vanished.
We thought we already knew about many of those big sites. Some of them are almost kilometer long, and then they have perfect rectangular shape, which was surprising.
So, who really made this large site, and why? Based on the images and Olmec-style rock carvings found recently in Morelos, Mexico, some speculate this could have been used for religious rituals like human sacrifice. These and similar artworks suggest Olmec leaders ritually killed captives of war and other elites to gain the favor of the gods. Although the fate of the Olmec is unknown, one thing is definitely clear. LIDAR is the future of archaeology. In fact, another recent LIDAR find uncovered this 1,500-year-old urban settlement in the Bolivian Amazon. More evidence that cultures we've always thought of as undeveloped were actually more sophisticated than we ever imagined. But are these ruins in Mexico the remains of the Olmec civilization or something else? Let's see what our experts can dig up. Archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart says it's unlikely this could be the ancient lost city of El Dorado, as some have speculated, since the Mexican state of Tabasco, where it's located, is not known for gold deposits. But maybe instead it has something to do with the search for liquid gold.
Mexico's national oil company, Pemex, has been intensively working in there. So it's possible that some of those things that look ancient might be overgrown Pemex platforms.
But as he looks more closely, Barnhart recognizes the pattern of these structures as something familiar to archaeologists.
This entire thing was once a big platform with buildings and probably big sculptures as well. We're talking about huge areas upon which the Olmec put their cities.
Anthropologist Kathy Strain points to another important clue.
It looks like mounds that we already know about that are at the two other complexes that we know are associated with Olmec. The Mayans came along later and they occupied a different place in that jungle. And so we know this was exclusively Olmec because of where it's located.
So we think it's Olmec, but we still don't know exactly what we're looking at or what purpose it served.
It is possible that this could represent a burial ground, but burial mounds tend to be small. What this could be is a platform for religious purposes. You would have the ruler at one end and a parade going up the middle, spectators on the sides.
A rendering of what this platform may have looked like demonstrates that the Olmec were likely the first Mesoamerican civilization with the engineering know-how to build such monumental stone structures.
But we won't know that information until we see what it looks like physically.
Now, of course, it's long been suggested that various Mesoamerican sites like the Nazca Lines in Peru were designed to communicate with or even guide extraterrestrial visitors. Mainstream archaeologists usually dismiss these theories, but even they remain mystified about this latest find.
Honestly, we don't know what they are. We don't know why they built this and what they mean.
Our verdict? Olmec archaeological site. But what it's for and why the civilization collapsed is still unknown. We do know that the Olmec invented calendars, created the system of mathematics, and they even had toothpaste. But the exact extent of their sophistication remains a secret covered by the jungle. It's October 2020 in Telwara, Bihar, India. A villager is making his way into town when he spots something almost demonic. He grabs his camera and records this. A goat clearly walking on its hind legs. The creature advances down the road. As we push in, the goat, seemingly unaware that it's being watched, struts for several yards before dropping down on all fours. Take a look at this baffling display.
Wow, that's crazy.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt discusses the goat's connection to a dark figure from the fringes of Christianity.
The Templars from the Crusades would worship this deity known as Baphomet, which was often portrayed as a half-man, half-goat type creature. That particular imagery has been adapted and passed down up until modern day times when Satanists and pagan belief systems will worship Baphomet.
Early Christianity co-opted pagan beliefs and associated them with the devil in order to discredit paganism at a time when Christianity was spreading. To further demonize paganism and goats, societies went as far as to create humanoid goat monsters.
Krampus, a folkloric figure from Alpine mythology, a half-man, half-goat-like creature that appears only on Christmas, sort of the antithesis of Santa Claus.
In the Bible, the book of Leviticus tells of a ritual in which one goat is sacrificed while another is touched by a priest and imbued with the sins of local residents. It's then sent into the woods, taking the town's impurities with it. That's where the term scapegoat comes from. Which explanation for this upright goat is the greatest of all time? Let's ask our experts. Catholic miracle historian Michael O'Neill discusses the possibility of Satan possessing an animal.
If we were to look at the point of possession in the first place, Satan is looking to capture souls, to deprive that soul from union with God. And so when we talk about animals not having an immortal soul, we say Satan wouldn't bother with possessing an animal. So we can rule out animals altogether based on that.
So what about the thought that this could be the satanic entity Baphomet?
Baphomet is a modern conception of what the devil would look like, perhaps a symbol that's used by Satanists in modern times. The idea of associating Baphomet, the pagan idol, with a goat is a satanic convention starting in the 1850s. We see this goat walking like a person, and people might say, well, there's Baphomet, but there's absolutely no connection between the two.
That answers why goats are associated with Satanism, a rep they have not earned. But why is this one walking? Wildlife biologist Dr. Stephanie Shuttler has a hypothesis.
Goats are pretty smart animals. There have been instances of goats learning how to open door latches and let themselves in and out. They often go on their hind legs to be able to reach those plants more out of reach.
The foraging goats engage in what is called browsing. Having evolved in mountains, they've adapted to finding food in hard-to-reach places. They're selective about which foods they eat and are able to stand on their hind legs and reach with their mouths to obtain a snack of choice.
What I think is happening here is that this is a well-trained goat. Perhaps it was taught to go on its hind legs for tricks. These aren't the only quadruped animals that have been taught to walk on their hind legs. People have trained their dogs to walk on their back legs, and also bears. I can definitively say that this is a well-trained goat doing a pretty cool trick.
Our verdict? This is a well-trained goat. While this behavior is out of the ordinary, goats were one of the first animals to be tamed by humans. I guess it's no huge surprise that they've learned to walk like us. I'm just waiting for them to do my taxes. It's February 2022 outside the city of Évora in Portugal. A man who's from out of town sightseeing sets out to explore the area from a bird's eye view with his drone. His aerial videos show a grouping of large gray boulders in a clearing surrounded by trees. The stones are arranged several rows thick in an oblong oval shape. Closer-up photos from the ground show that the boulders stand on end at various heights. Journalist Eric Grundhauser says this strange site is known as the Almendres Cromlech. Cromlech means circles of stone, and almendres from the Portuguese word for almond, referring to the stone's shape.
This collection of some 93 standing rocks is thought to predate Stonehenge by around 2,000 years. So this Portuguese formation is actually much older and much more mysterious.
It's believed that the main design of the Almendres Cromlech was completed by about 5000 BC. That makes it more than 1,000 years older than the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, and the earliest known permanent urban settlements on Earth. Who could have built the structure, and how?
Without technology like the wheel, moving these stones would have been near impossible for normal humans.
It's believed that the first wheeled vehicle wasn't even invented till at least 3500 BC in Mesopotamia. So the mystery about these stones deepens.
They're so heavy that it's hard to believe that without some system involving wheels, pulleys, that these stones would have been able to be brought to standing.
Another strange thing, the site had been forgotten for centuries. It was only discovered back in 1964, and there are no records to indicate what its purpose was. Some wonder if it has some celestial significance.
These standing stones are arranged in such a way as to align with the sun, the moon, the stars. On the winter solstice, the shadows that they cast actually point directly to another standing stone some 2 kilometers away.
Since some of the stones bear unusual carvings, others suggest the cromlech might have served a more religious function. Could a large flat stone found in the middle have been used as an altar to carry out ritual sacrifices? Recently, another standing stone structure was discovered in Jordan that's thought to be even older at an estimated 9,000 years old. Believed to be a sacred site used by a Neolithic hunting group, it doesn't have the astronomical precision of the Portuguese site. So is the Almandres cromlech the oldest known application of astronomy in the world? If so, where could this knowledge of the stars have come from? Let's ask the experts. Anthropologist Kathy Strange says it's likely these Neolithic people achieved this huge feat with some ingenuity and a lot of sheer willpower.
It is theorized that they would take logs, use rope. They likely used their cattle to help pull the stones along. After it gets off one log, you run it up to the front and put it in front of that, and so on.
Yet how were these prehistoric people able to so precisely place these stones? Did they have some secret celestial or spiritual knowledge? Most experts think the alleged sacrificial altar is just a knocked-over boulder that's been chipped away at over time. But archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart believes the stones could have had some ritual significance.
Perhaps it's astronomer priests who are watching the cycles of the heavens. They were putting them in the ground in an arrangement that was based on watching the sun rise and set over a year.
In addition to lining up with the solstice on the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, the sun and moon rise and set over exactly the same points on the monument's axis. And Barnhart says this configuration may have served a very practical purpose.
Once you're a farmer, you've got to know when to plant and when to harvest and when to do it again. That's that cycle. So these stones acknowledging the solar year are at least related to agriculture.
Moving from a nomadic existence to a more sedentary one allowed people to observe the cycles more precisely. And interestingly, it's one of several sites throughout Europe. And though Barnhart says they were probably for farming, they also might be early art.
They go from the Netherlands all the way down into the Mediterranean. I think that these stones are early man's attempt at immortality. People said, let's do something so amazing that people, well after we're dead, will remember it and admire it. But what they called themselves, it's hidden to history.
Our verdict? These images likely show a celestial calendar, a sort of giant sundial for seasons rather than times of the day. Whether its purpose was astrological, agricultural, or simply artistic is lost to time. It's October 2021 near the Taima Oasis in northwest Saudi Arabia. Photographer Satish Javili is trekking through the remote desert area to document a magnificent sight. His shots show a monumental rock formation in the shape of a rounded rectangle. It appears to be a monadnock, which is an isolated mass of stone. The 18 by 27-foot ochre-colored slab is covered in prehistoric petroglyphs of horses, camels, and hunters, shown in stark relief and detail. But these 4,000-year-old drawings are not the most notable feature of this formation. That honor is reserved for a perfectly precise crevice that divides the rock in two. The crack is so straight and exact that it seems impossible it could be natural or even man-made without the most advanced precision tools. What's even more remarkable is that each half is balanced precariously on a pedestal, yet the formation remains standing after millennia. Satish says he's never seen anything quite like it.
It is simply mind-blowing, the way the rock has been split. The archaeological specialists have gone there, but nobody has come out with the right answer.
The large, solid boulder looks as though it was split in half with the aid of a precision laser. It's hard to believe this perfect crack down the middle could have been accidental. So there are a couple of things I want to show you with the Al Nazla rock. First of all, this pedestal right here. This pedestal right here. Built for monuments to rest on, right? Take a look at the line down the center. How does this happen? If you had a stone saw, could you cut the stone that perfectly? Again, there are petroglyphs all through this rock. This rock was created hundreds of thousands of years ago, and it has certainly spawned wild and amazing stories. Journalist Eric Grunhauser says one theory is that the people who drew the glyphs 4,000 years ago also split the rock. But did they have advanced enough technology at that time?
The ancient cultures of the area were working with much more rudimentary tools than one would expect to be able to create something with such precision. It's almost as if someone would have had a laser or some sort of highly precision saw to create this sort of break.
There was a nomadic people roaming the Arabian desert a few centuries later who were known for their engineering skill.
It could have been created possibly by the Nabatean people, same culture that created the Petra site in Jordan, whose knowledge and expertise would have possibly been advanced enough to create something with such precision as we see in the Al Nazla Formation.
But even the Nabateans didn't have access to high-tech tools like laser cutters and circular saws. So the exactness of the cut has led some to speculate it could have been made by advanced ancient visitors from another planet.
Is it possible that the Al Nazla Formation was created by extraterrestrials? Was it left as a gift, not unlike the monolith from 2001, A Space Odyssey, to push humanity forward, to inspire us?
As early as the 5th century BC, the Nabateans began carving elaborate multi-story building facades into the red sandstone cliff faces of Petra. But that site is in Jordan, 450 miles away from the Al Nazla rock, and it involves more complex carvings than a single straight line through one rock in the middle of nowhere. So that might be a stretch. Let's see what our experts can dig up. Physicist Matthew Shadagis investigates to see if the rock in Al Nazla could actually have been made by man or aliens.
So I've taken an image of the Al Nazla rock, and I've actually drawn two perfectly straight lines from my computer. And what you can see in several locations is that actually the rock pokes past the straight lines. So this gap is actually not perfectly straight. Humans could create cuts in rocks, and nearby civilizations here are known to have done that. No need for ancient aliens.
Since the line isn't actually as perfectly straight as it looks at first, perhaps it was made by people from the region. Archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart says nearby ancient civilizations like the Egyptians had special techniques for cutting into rock without high-tech tools.
The typical way that Egyptians would split a stone like this would be to get up on the top of it and peck holes into it in a line. Then, as they pecked the holes deep, they'd then put wooden stakes inside each one of the holes.
So the Egyptians would put the stakes in a straight line like the one seen at Al Nazla.
And then they would water those stakes like you water a plant. When the wood expanded together as a line of stakes, they would pull the rock apart, and that split will travel through the whole stone and split it.
But geologist Dr. Bob Anderson says there aren't any telltale signs of this construction technique that you would expect to see on the top or sides of the rock if the crack was man-made.
There's no chip marks, there's no pieces. You don't even see fragments on the ground around it that would say that if you're chipping and breaking.
So could this crack be caused by a natural disaster like an earthquake?
I realized that this Monadnock, or this isolated rock here, is not isolated. There's almost a trail of boulders going back. They're all cracked at the exact location. You can see that the crack is a result of regional tectonic features.
So Anderson believes the rock may sit on a fault line, and it's likely an earthquake or shifting tectonic plates created the crack not just in this boulder, but in other rocks along the same fault line. Or it could also be that the crack is a joint, which in geological terms means when a rock breaks naturally without displacement. It's rare, but sometimes the fracture can divide the rock in an unusually straight line. Another possibility is that freeze-thaw weathering may have caused the crack. But no matter how it was split in two, Anderson thinks erosion may have played a part in its near-perfect appearance.
The reason it looks so clearly cut is because it's been willowed out by the wind. It's being almost like sandblasted and polished, which has opened up that crack more.
The ground around and under the boulder eroded so much that eventually it was left just resting on these two natural pedestals. Someday the forces of gravity will likely cause it to collapse. The Al Nazla Rock has baffled scientists for centuries, but we think we finally found the true answer. Our verdict? Tectonic activity created a crack thousands or even millions of years ago. It was later perfected with erosion, which also made those pedestals the rock now rests on.